Welcome everyone to Capalino's Future of New York webinar series. Capalino is the largest urban strategy firm in the country, and I am Susan Hinkson-Carling, and I am a group leader here at Capalino in the Land Use Housing and Real Estate Group, as well as Managing Director of Capalino Ventures. But more importantly, for this conversation, I am a trustee of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of New York. First, some housekeeping. The webinar should be about an hour, and the Q&A function is enabled, and we welcome your questions and comments, and we encourage you to put those up. So please type in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them during the series. We are extremely pleased and privileged to have with us today Alicia Guevara. She's Chief Executive Officer of Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York, New York's largest mentoring organization, and whose mission embodies the idea of offering young people the possibility of greater opportunity through mentorship. We also have with us Osmar Perez, who is a mentee, and Peter Brandt, who is Osmar's mentor. For those of you who are not aware, January is Mentoring Month. So this conversation is extremely timely, and many of us know from our own experience in school, business, and just in life, how important the role of a mentor is in shaping careers, acting as a guidepost along life's path. We also know that many people are not presented with that opportunity to be mentored, and BBBS and its relationship with the business community, other nonprofits, and government plays a very important role in helping young people make connections and keep those connections. So welcome Alicia and Osmar and Peter to this very important conversation. First, perhaps we could have Alicia give us a little bit more color on BBBS, its mission, and Osmar and Peter, perhaps you might chime in and tell us about your mentor and mentee relationship. So Alicia.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you so much for inviting us to join you in this really important conversation. I know that Osmar and Peter really appreciate it, and the Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City community does as well. You know, as you noted, Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City is the largest youth mentoring organization in New York, but in fact, we were the first youth mentoring organization in the nation, founded in 1904, and truly because of the power of mentoring as it flourished in New York City, we were able to create and drive a national movement that now serves many hundreds of thousands of young people across our nation. In New York City, we annually serve thousands of young people like Osmar across our 5 boroughs, and we do so by pairing them with caring, compassionate, consistent adult mentors who commit to helping young people further their personal goals, their academic goals, their social and emotional goals. Because the mission of Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City is to build and support mentoring relationships to ignite the biggest possible futures for young people like Osmar, who through his relationship with Peter can really test and explore all of the opportunities before him. And so how do we do this? Primarily, we do it by focusing on 3 program areas. The first is our signature cornerstone program that most people know our organization for, where a little and a big, a mentee and a mentor are matched in the community. They come together twice a month. And even in the midst of this pandemic, they have still found ways to connect virtually to ensure that that relationship is lasting and flourished and nourished. The other program that we have is what we call our workplace mentoring program. We partner with over 65 corporations across the city of New York, across multiple sectors, everything from banking to real estate, healthcare and tech, entertainment. And we bring cohorts of high school students, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders into these corporate corridors, now virtual corporate corridors, where they are mentored by the very employees of those corporations, again, twice a month, and facilitated by our trained and qualified staff. And the third program, which I think is incredibly timely for our discussion, is our College and Career Success Program. And our College and Career Success Program is intended to leverage the mentoring relationship in order to be there for our littles, our young people, in their post-secondary journeys, to really stand with them following high school completion as they explore higher education in some cases or career choices. But throughout, we are absolutely committed to making sure that the match is well resourced, that we support the match when challenges surface or interests and opportunities surface. And that really is the work of Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City.
That's wonderful. It's so important to be able to really support our youth, especially at this time. It'd be great to hear from Peter and Osmar a little bit about how you were matched and how your relationship has blossomed and the kinds of things that you're doing.
Yeah, so I'll start. Thank you so much, Susan. I was matched with Peter in the Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City program around like October 2017. The reason we were matched, I'm not really sure. That was up to my program manager's discretion, but yeah, like we've hit it off like really well ever since then. Like I've been learning a lot. Even before joining this program, I was already like interested in like the world of finance. I was just like wanting to look into it more. So having a mentor, like a big in like from TD Bank, was like really beneficial for me. So like, for example, like Peter has been like teaching me how to and like reviewing my resume and my cover letter as well. And like in general, like best practices for interviews, that's really been helpful because I applied to an internship for BlackRock and like the tips he's giving me like really helped me out in getting admitted into the like internships that I really wanted to like apply to. And like, it's not just like all of these like technical like business skills. He's also been teaching me like skills that I can apply later in life. I remember in one of the workshops, he was just giving me like extra advice aside from the workshop, teaching me how to like build my credit. That's been really important to me because, it's just, I don't want to like, get into that like so early in life. So yeah, he's been really teaching me all of these like really helpful skills. Yeah, it's been great so far. And just like Alicia's touched, like our relationship is still going on. Our mentorship is still going on via the College and Career Success Program. I just really feel his support like all the way.
That's wonderful. So Peter, how are you feeling about being a mentor?
So I work at TD Bank, and as part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters professional workplace mentorship program, about 3.5 years ago, Osmar and I were matched. So basically, every 2 weeks during the school year for about 2 hours, they would come in originally, and then once the pandemic hit, we went virtual. But we were just, teaching them about, in different ways to prepare for their professional career, college prep, the application process, resume building, as Omar's touched on, as well as other networking skills. So it was a really cool experience because I met him his sophomore year, and I got to see him grow and, learn more and adapt over the 3 years of high school. And now we continued into college. So it's been a really good experience.
Oh, that sounds really wonderful, and a real tribute to the people who support these programs. So sort of starting off the discussion, during the COVID pandemic, a huge crisis in New York City, economically, socially, but I think we have an extraordinary opportunity to engage young people in solutions, right? In figuring this whole thing out to make our city better. So maybe we want to have a little conversation about how the business community and nonprofits and government can play an important and necessary role in engaging young people. How do you see the role of mentorship in that context, especially with COVID? And what especially should the business communities be doing, reaching out?
I'm glad to get us started in this conversation. What's clear to me is that mentorship is critical and it's essential. I keep saying that mentorship is of this moment, was made for this moment, in part because, and I would say mostly because it's grounded in a relationship, relationships that are malleable, that extend beyond places and spaces. And at a time when everyone's been impacted by this, I think about the experience that our young people are having. They've been uprooted from their school environments, which aren't just their academic foundations, but most often their social foundations and their emotional foundations. This is New York City. Most of us, many young people, are living in small New York City apartments with multi-generational residents joining them. In some cases, their caretakers and parents might be home working because no one's working from home truly and supporting their learning. But in other cases, their parents and guardians are essential workers who are just trying to make ends meet. And so the isolation that young people are feeling in this moment is concerning. And my hope is in the mentoring relationship, mentoring that in many ways has worked to alleviate the isolation, to ensure that young people feel seen, acknowledged, heard. And so I think about the role that the business community plays. And I would urge and really grounded in knowing that our corporate partners have responded resoundingly and have really affirmed their commitment to our organization, and would urge others in the business community to invest in young people now. Because what young people are going to need mostly is access and opportunity. The majority of the young people that we serve, 89%, identify as people of color, which is consistent with the demographics of young people in the city of New York. And we know that this pandemic has not been race neutral, and in fact, one's racial identity has compounded the impacts of the pandemic. That said, what the business community can offer is access and opportunity, and not solely for young people, but also for their employees. Everyone wants to do more. And we find that when employees are engaged as mentors, their loyalty increases, their retention increases, their promotion increases, because they are committed to making a difference in the life of a young person. Susan, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Great. I was just asking Peter, maybe he had sort of some insight being on the corporate end, how he sees his mentoring affect not only his mentee, but maybe his coworkers, and sort of maybe talk about how your coworkers view you as a mentor, and how is that playing out in the business world?
Yeah, so I was just gonna touch on how I think mentorship is extremely important, especially during, the pandemic, given like when you're in high school, there's so much uncertainty, where can I go to college? Where am I gonna go to college? Can I afford it? Whatnot. And, you know, it's like not even so important to give them the best answer possible. I just think just being a sounding board for them, someone they can reach out to and, bounce ideas off of and whatnot. Touching on what you had just mentioned, um, it's a great it was a great way for like the company to foster a community. So I met a ton of people within TD Bank who I would have never interacted with. Um, meeting every other week with Osmar and the other students, and you see them in a different light. So I think it's been extremely positive, not only for Osmar, myself, but also for my team within TD Bank, and getting to know other people within TD Bank.
I should imagine also it helps the mentee, the young person, be able to really sort of study corporate culture in a way, and be, maybe ready to, once they get out of school, to be ready to take on a position. Have you found that it's sort of, this program is a good feeder, shall we say, for business?
I would definitely say that. And also, just especially when they're coming into the office for the first 2.5 years, just putting them in that environment. They'd never been in that environment before. I'd never been in an environment before I started working. And just that, the repetition, I think they see like what goes on every day, how people carry themselves and whatnot. And I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So Osmar, are you feeling that you're getting a good dose of what corporate life might be like, or what business might be like, and where you might fit in to that?
Yeah, definitely. Like before joining like the workplace program, right? Like with mentoring, I thought like, everybody like in finance is super like uptight, everything's super formal, but it's like, it's less restricted, much more friendlier. And yeah, like Peter said, like I learned how to carry my stuff. Like I didn't know like what business, like the difference between business formal attire and like business casual attire was. So like I learned from the other bakes in the program as well. Yeah, it's just a really great program. Like I love talking to everyone there.
That's great. Listen, I have a problem trying to figure out, business casual and what is that? And especially now during COVID, I've seen many different versions of business casual. So you're not alone in the rowboat. So maybe Alicia, you could talk a little bit about maybe some innovative ways that BBBS is engaging various communities, both business and reaching out into communities of color or underserved communities, and what does that look like for the agency?
Sure. I'm really keen on Peter, your contribution, because I think that's right. And Osmar, yours as well. Our workplace program is really intended to do several things. It's grounded in a curriculum that's evidence-based and helps our young people to further their leadership skills, their personal skills, their professional skills like how to give an introduction, how to engage in teamwork, how to problem solve, and how to create and represent your brand, what it means to be you, what you offer, what your value proposition is. And all of these skills, as we all know, were so critical in the business environment, particularly as careers and jobs develop at the pace of business. For many corporations and for many business leaders, envisioning what careers are going to look like 10 years from now is a really complex exercise. But what we continue to be grounded in is ensuring that our young people today have the access to develop the hard skills and the soft skills so that they can thrive in business, and to do so in partnership with a mentor. And as I've been known to say, and I say repeatedly, we don't do this work alone. I'm clear that the future of the young people in the city of New York is going to be anchored by public-private partnerships, by the corporate community and the government community and the nonprofit and academic and health communities coming together to wrap around our young people, their futures and their possibilities. And so there's a tremendous role that all anchors in our city can play. And at Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City, we've seen that come to the fold in a number of ways. One is by investing in our workplace mentoring program. The program runs 10 months along the school year. And even in the midst of the pandemic, we were able to move on to virtual platforms. And so we bring our littles and their bigs together on Zoom twice a month. And they come and they meet in cohorts, much like Peter described his experience at TD Bank, who happens to be one of our partners. And they're guided through a curriculum that furthers the skills of our littles and also more deeply engages the employees of said corporations. But that is the deepest level of engagement. And there are other ways too that the corporate community has responded. We have a number of trustees that represent the very fabric of our corporate community and have signed on to be leaders and stewards of our work. Other corporations have said, we're going to offer a one-day full-on engagement opportunity where we invite littles to perhaps help us with a corporate challenge that we're wrestling with. And what that speaks of is a real appreciation for what young people have to offer. Osmar, young people like you will have a lot to offer in the future, but I'm also keen on what you have to offer in this moment. And elevating and lifting up your voices will be instrumental as we begin to imagine what our city will look like.
Absolutely. We actually, let me see, we've got a question that's come in, and I think maybe it'd be good to start to think about answering some of these questions. One question is, how do we leverage our public school system in this idea of mentorship? How do we sort of incorporate this more into the public school system? Maybe establishing, some really kind of hard and fast programming, and to capture the talent that sometimes just isn't captured. There are some extraordinary young people out there that never have the ability or the opportunity to show what it is they can really do. So I guess the question is, how do we capture these relationships using the public schools?
Yeah, I think it's a timely question and a quite relevant one. And I've got a couple of ideas. The first is, I think that this is a moment for corporate partners and corporate entities to work hand in hand with our educational system. Certainly, I think what the pandemic has highlighted is the need for us to invest in diversified learning and in increased ways in which we diversify the ways in which we teach and instruct our young people. And through a public-private partnership with the educational systems, with our public schools, and with our corporate partners that anchor the city of New York, we have a moment where we can give shape to curriculum that perhaps is more industry focused. I know that the technology community has certainly done that and begun doing it through their computer and technology education programs that are run through New York City's public schools. Other industries have also invested in giving shape and influence and form to our curriculum. But this is the moment for us to increase our intention, to really explore how we're teaching young people, to perhaps be more directive in guiding the learning of our young people and increasing access to varied industry learning. I think that our school system is certainly hungry for that level of investment. And I think the opportunity is right for corporations to dive in doing so. And I might add, beyond our learning, I think what's critical is to offer young people workplace experiences. Yes, for the sake of career exploration, but also so that they may see the possibilities of who they can become and to begin investing in them now. Because ensuring that they're building the soft skills and hard skills for their success will be critical. And so I would urge communities to consider, the corporate community to consider internship opportunities, curated work experiences that are timed over a period of time, and that those be anchored with a mentor within the corporation. What about the possibility of a mentor for all, a mentor for all young people across the city of New York, and perhaps a corporate mentor for all who can really help navigate beyond what you're trained to do, can help you navigate some of the challenges, the cultures that exist in the very corporations that anchor our city. So those are just some ideas. Because it's important that we invest not just in academic attainment and academic promotion, but truly invest over the long term in the journey of the next talent pipeline for these very corporations.
No, it's very true that, you know, we do have a talented workforce, yet untapped because of age, shall we say. But if you capture them early enough and help them early enough, it can make all of the difference, not only to the young person, but, you know, to the future of business. Do you see perhaps where government might play a role in sort of being able to make that sort of thing happen, where in schools, you know, that we would see some real sort of solid programming? You know, you go to English in the morning for an hour, and then, you know, your next period is going to be sort of hanging out with the CEO of some company, or being mentored by a business person, and that become part of the fabric of school.
You know, I absolutely agree. I think that's certainly a way. And I think what's exciting is there have certainly been a number of models that are worthy of replication, where access to learning and training within a more formal school setting is complemented by workplace experiences. And that's really what I'm calling out, Susan, is what would it look like to have English one period, and the next period you are in this case, virtual corporate setting, but ideally because we will get through this pandemic, into those very corporate corridors where the business of our city is taking place. You know, Osmar, I'm curious to hear from you, and maybe Peter from you. Certainly, Osmar, what you might be interested in seeing by way of our education system. What classes do you think could be helpful to you as you're thinking about and shaping your career, and would love to hear that too.
Okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, one class like I really wanted, yeah, so there are like two types of classes I really wanted to have like in high school. Like one of them would be like how to like manage like money, because you know, once like students like enter college, like for me especially, like it was just very hard like managing my money, like managing credit, like yeah. And then another class I would have liked in high school would have been like a class about like transferable skills. And if somebody like is interested, if a student's like interested in like specific fields, then like a class for like transferable skills in the specific field that he or she is like interested in. So for example, like as I said before, like in high school, I was just like really interested in like finance and business. So it would have been really helpful for me to have had like a business writing class, right? Because when I was interning at BlackRock, it was very difficult. Trying to adjust to like business writing, you know, like letter of transmittals, all these proposals, different technical documents. But if somebody doesn't have like a specific, already have like a career path or like interest in mind, then yeah, a class about like transferable skills, you know, like analytical skills, like typing skills, right? Yeah, I think, yeah, those would be like the courses I would have had in mind. Yeah.
And yeah, just building on that, I think a personal finance class, as Osmar touched on, would be extremely helpful for all high school students, because you never really learn about that stuff. And then also just, like a career exploration class, because I'd say before college, I didn't even really know like all the different fields that are out there. And I don't think I even figured it out until, I might not have it figured out now, but um, I would just say something along those lines. Because like people don't even know about trade schools and different things like that. There's so many different paths someone can take out of high school. So I think learning about that would be extremely helpful.
I think that's such a salient point, Peter. I mean, and Osmar, for starters, I could certainly use a business writing course. I know that my emails tend to be a little lengthier than their recipients appreciate, but it's so true. There are multiple pathways, and I think that really is the task at hand: is how do we illustrate those pathways? How do we ensure that there are mentors and sponsors along those pathways and make them accessible to our young people as early as possible in their formation? And Susan, to your earlier question about the role that government could be playing, look beyond the opportunities that I think have been presented for our academic and our school systems to reconsider how we train and prepare young people. This is also a moment for us to incent our business community, to ensure that, I think it's incentive enough to have access to young people like Osmar, who are going to continue to populate talent pipelines. But perhaps this is a moment for us to become even more creative and consider how we incent communities to engage more deeply, because certainly the return is going to be exponential by investing in young people like Osmar today. And to our policy leaders and our civic decision makers, our public officials, I'd strongly urge you to consider really sponsoring policies and movements that call for mentorship for all. Because no matter what places our careers have landed us in, I continue to go to the incredible and invaluable impact that my mentors have had on me and that I've been able to reciprocate in others. And that's not a unique story for most people who've reached the pinnacle of their careers. So let's invest by making sure that there's a mentor for all young people in the city of New York.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. I was very lucky in my life to have, sort of a coterie of mentors, people that along my way stepped in to help me. But we know that that's not always the case, and if we can facilitate that meeting, that happening, I think that would be an absolutely wonderful thing. We've got a couple more questions that are coming in. I want to make sure that we can get to most of them. We have a young construction owner who is interested in sort of finding out how to make that connection, right? How to go about bringing in perhaps a mentee, a couple of mentees, or starting this up. What kind of advice can you give this young business owner on how to get started?
Well, for starters, I would encourage you to reach out to us at Big Brothers Big Sisters of NYC, BBBS, NYC.org. Because when I look at the composition of our corporate partners, they are primarily Fortune 500 companies who have over 30 years been working with us to extend their employees, their resources as an investment in mentoring. And I would venture to say that entrepreneurs like you would be incredibly valuable for the young people that we serve. and offer a different perspective and a different pathway, a viable pathway, we would absolutely welcome that. Certainly because of the perspective that it offers our young people, but because of the return that it offers you, the gratifying experience of being able to invest in a young person, and perhaps a young person who could become part of your workforce. And so I would welcome a conversation with you once this session is complete.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see, we have another question that is to Osmar and Peter. What do you wish the corporate sector or the educational system knew about your experience right now?
Okay, so yeah, I'm like more than happy to answer this one. So yeah, I'm gonna start with the education system. So right now the youth, right, everybody's doing online learning. And what I'd really like for a lot of instructors in the education system and like just principals in general, like to understand that, okay, so personally, right, I would finish like all my homework during like lunch period, you know, I'll go to the library, or like when I had time between my extracurricular activities and the end of school, right? So I would always associate like school and the facilities and the buildings of the extracurricular activities I participated in with work, right? And then when I got home, like around 7:30, right, because of the train ride, that's when it was time to rest. Like I really needed to, you know, get ready for the next day. But now with like online learning and like online school, like, you know, work and rest are like together. And this apartment's really small. So like it's been very difficult to be like as extremely productive as I was before the COVID-19 public health emergency. And so I just really like for the education system to be more like sympathetic, not empathetic, because like, you know, older generations, they've never like experienced this before, right? To be sympathetic with like students, right? Like we can't get everything done like really quickly because it's just very hard transitioning from like work and home being separate, and now like they're together. It's just yeah, I'm not really fond of this, but you know, we gotta do what we gotta do. And for the corporate sector, for the youth right now, okay, so especially for like recruiting and like hiring managers, like I really want them to understand that internships should not require any experience. The purpose of an internship is to gain experience, right? I'd also want them to recognize that entry level jobs shouldn't require like 3 to 5 years of experience. Like, yeah, they just shouldn't, because the purpose of an entry level job is to kickstart your career and begin that growth. So, and also like, you know, see if, I'd also like recruiting hiring managers, like to see if, yeah, to see if good experience will be accepted as payment at the grocery store, to see if great company culture will pay the bills. Like they both won't. I really want like, yeah, I really want them, that's what I want like the corporate sector to really understand. Yeah, because, but I don't think they should really worry too much with experience. Like, I can't speak for everybody, but most of like the young people I know, like my age, we're like, we're like, um, we're like hurrying to find like a lot of internships right now. So yeah, just like give like young people a chance, you know.
Got it. Got it.
And I would say, I guess for people in those two communities, anyone who's on the fence, you know, I feel like a natural thought is kind of like, oh, like what can I really like give a mentee? Like, what am I gonna like add value for? And as I kind of said earlier, I think it's just, you know, being there for them as like a sounding board, as someone they can reach out to. Um, and for me, like, I have like some informal mentors, and it's not like they've told me anything, you know, earth shattering. It's more that when I'm in a bind and I have, you know, I'm in like kind of a pickle and I'm not sure how to approach a situation, I can just, you know, give them a call and kind of see what they think, and, you know, or just hear me out, like me just speak my mind, and it kind of just gives me more confidence. So I would say uh, you as a mentor will definitely add value. And as you know, the mentees join these programs, it gives them a huge leg up because it adds something to their resume. It shows that they're putting an effort forward. So it puts them in a huge advantage, even just participating in the program.
Exactly. Well, we've got a couple of more questions actually on the connection between a mentoring program and the school system. Seems to be a lot of interest in that, in trying to build really a substantive curriculum that involves mentors. And it's interesting that this is such a hot topic, and I think probably because of the pandemic, it even is accelerated because you have kids who are now sort of outside of that school realm. They're at home or they're somewhere else and are not able to necessarily have uh, uh, the identity of being in school, and then the ability to have a mentor, a consistent mentor, because they're not all together and they're not all sort of learning the same thing. So is there a way of engaging school kids maybe more on a substantive manner while we are not in school? We're virtual. So that sort of changes the dynamic and how we would reach these kids. Do we have any thoughts on how to manage that for school-age kids?
Susan, as you can imagine, it's something that I've been wrestling with a lot, certainly because of the thousands of young people that we serve. And as a parent of young children myself, it's something that I've been thinking about very deeply. And there are a couple of thoughts that come to mind. The first is that our schools alone can't do this. Can't rethink and reimagine, or shouldn't have to rethink and reimagine what learning, practical learning, could look like for young people. I think that is the moment where our business community and our educational community lock arms to match pedagogy to resources and opportunities. And I think about some of the work that Big Brothers Big Sisters did this summer, where we engaged some of our corporate partners in offering up what they were calling a corporate challenge. Typically something that they were responding to oftentimes as a result of the pandemic and the impact that it was having on their business. And we pulled together groups of littles and matched them with these corporate leaders on a real business issue that they were wrestling with. And over the course of several weeks, they arrived at solutions. The business leaders were offering background and data and information, and in some cases guiding and thought partnering with the young people. But it was the young people that were offering up the solutions. And for me, it was affirmative and a real awakening that our young people have something to say in this moment today. Osmar, I keep going to what you were talking about in terms of some of the barriers to entry, even entry level entry that exists. And I recall a conversation that I had several years ago with a business leader in the banking community. And one of the expectations for the entry level role was attainment of a bachelor's degree from college. And I asked him, if I delivered a young person that brought the skill sets by way of hard skills and soft skills to your business and was able to meet your business needs, what then would be the purpose of a bachelor's degree? Someone who didn't have the bachelor's degree as a credential, but perhaps these skill sets. And this business leader thought long and hard and said there really wouldn't be a difference. If they're a contributing member to my organization and adding to my bottom line, then there really is no reason to have this barrier to entry, which, by the way, is a barrier for many, many communities in the city of New York, because access to a college or completion of a college education may just not be feasible. And so since then, fortunately, that bank has removed that credential, and entering into that organization has become easier. And so, Osmar, I just want to lift up and thank you for what you offered, because I would call colleagues in the business community to perhaps reconsider what qualifications they've set at the entry level, and whether or not these are in fact a necessity to hire a contributing member to their corporation. And so back to our school environments and our public schools in particular. Look, I think this is a moment to begin offering those experiences earlier on, right? Offering the experiences so that when our students are graduating from high school, they in fact already have baseline experience that makes them marketable for the businesses that anchor our city. And this is also a moment to begin training differently. And I agree, we shouldn't wait till young people are in high school. Young people are smarter, more nimble, they're sponges, they absorb, and they ought to have the benefit of cutting edge learning as early as possible. I mean, this morning I had my 3-year-old son on a Zoom call, and if that isn't telling enough, we ought to be able at the most elementary levels to train young people in the same ways that our business community expects us to deliver.
I love it. Well, we've got a couple more minutes. Leave the floor open to anyone who wants to say anything that they didn't get a chance to say. And I didn't ask the question that you wanted me to ask.
Well, I'm Osmar and Peter, we serve many littles and bigs through the relationship, and I'm always excited when I get to share the space with you both. And I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about how your relationship in this moment has really grown or shifted, and how you've relied on one another to get to manage in this moment. We're all managing in this moment.
Okay, yeah, I think I can answer this first. Yeah, so Peter and I, we used to like speak to each other like bi-weekly, but because of like calls and stuff, like it's been monthly, but we still have that same quality of like communication. Yeah, I don't know how Peter would definitely rely on me. I've relied on him way more. He's always given the helping hand, like whenever like I want him to look over like my cover letter or like my resume, because yeah, like I also attend this program called SEO Scholars. Yeah, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity Scholars. And it's a pre-college program that helps low-income public students to and through college. And recently it changed like the resume format. So, you know, I reached out to Peter and I was like, hey, does this like seem right? Like he gave me a lot of pointers. Yeah, like just like very helpful all around. And I really appreciate like our relationship.
Yeah, I'd say, during the workplace mentorship program, we were talking extremely often. We're meeting every 2 weeks. And now in the college program, it's a little less. I mean, Osmar's obviously very busy with his college work now, and I'll just try to help him out, as he said, with different things like his resume, and we'll talk every once in a while. I mean, it's toned down a little bit, but I'd say I think I'm readily available for him whenever he's looking for advice, or he needs help with his resume or networking, whatnot. So just try to be there for him as much as I can.
Do you see your relationship continuing over time? or does it sunset ever?
I think remains to be seen, but I'm here all the time, so I think it'll continue as long as needed.
That's fantastic.
Peter, I can tell you from having met many, many bigs that the relationship continues to evolve, and in fact could be a lifelong relationship. I've heard so many stories of little stepping in for their big's weddings, and reverse, the big stepping in for little's life moments. And so Osmar and Peter, I think you're both on to a long path ahead.
That's great. Well, gee, we're about 5 minutes to closing, so just gonna wrap it up a little bit. Really, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope that our audience was able to gain some insights into the importance of mentoring in New York City, and how we can all benefit from our young people being mentored by those who, you know, can bring them along. It's just so important, not only for life's lessons, but for some practical, you know, so we all need somebody who's going to listen to us and help us to do the things that are in our hearts. And Big Brothers Big Sisters is just a magnet for that sort of thing. So all of you audience members out there who you know, would like very much to sort of explore how Big Brothers Big Sisters can form a partnership with you, please, please, please get in touch with Alicia. I think we are going to post your website, which has a far more fulsome explanation of everything on it. So that would be great. And hopefully we'll be able to get more littles and more bigs. But thank you so much, Alicia and Peter and Osmar. And thanks to the audience, and hope that we see you soon on our next Capalino Future of New York webinar. And thank you. Thank you. This has been fabulous.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for sharing this space with us. And thank you for giving light and a platform to a conversation that's really centered on the value and the importance of mentoring for the future of the city of New York, that takes into account young people where they are now, that invites multiple communities, our business community, our educational community, our civic and nonprofit community, to address the solution. I am a native New Yorker, and I believe in my city. I serve my city proudly, and I'm excited about what the young people of our city will offer us now and certainly into our future. So on behalf of all of us at Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Our pleasure.